First is the Republican compromise bill to redefine marriage to include gay marriage in the Senate. Now it's another Republican compromise, this time to give illegals a pathway to citizenship in the Senate. Tom Tillis is behind both. We got to talk about what's going on in the Senate and Tom Tillis, because the plan here must be to shove this through before Republicans take over the House in January, because Kevin McCarthy, say what you will, has vowed not to support any path to citizenship for illegals at all. So yesterday we get this in the Washington Post. Opinion: finally, a bipartisan deal to help the Dreamers is within reach. So here you have Tom Tillis from North Carolina. Now, North Carolina, as we talked about, did pretty well in the elections. The state continues to move to the right. They have the lieutenant governor, who I absolutely love there, Mark Robinson. They did well in the state Senate, the state House. And here you have Tom Tillis trying to crater the Republican Party from the inside. It's like this party just wants to do as much as they can to give up all their leverage, to totally push their voters away, to do anything they can, and they haven't even gotten to January yet. And this is what we always talk about. They always want the spotlight, and then they get the spotlight, and they have no idea what to do. They fall off the stage as soon as they take the stage. For 3 straight election cycles, running as the party of border security has largely failed for the GOP. Well, I totally disagree with that whatsoever. The American people, if you talk about it, they don't want an open border. They don't want this invasion that's going on at the open border. The numbers, we've never seen an invasion like we're seeing right now at the southern border. We see the numbers year over year. You can look at them month over month. You talk to people who are at the border. You talk to these police officers who are there. You talk to Homeland Security. You talk to Tom Homan. They will tell you. Talk to Ben Bergquam. They will tell you what is going on at the southern border is like anything we have ever seen before. The flood of illegals is never ending. Senator Tom Tillis, Republican from North Carolina, and Kristen Sinema, Democrat from Arizona, have reached an agreement on a draft framework of immigration reform compromises. So my first point out would be the word compromises. Why are we compromising on anything right now? Why are we compromising? The American people just voted. Why is Tom Tillis running to make deals at this point with Democrats? This is what you have to ask yourself about this party. It's just unbelievable. Whether they've been working on this for some time or not, the American people just voted. The border was something that people just voted on. And here's Tom Tillis running to do an amnesty bill with Kristen Sinema. They involve issues such as the fate of the Dreamers, brought here as children, and the processing of asylum seekers at the southern border. Will the 10 Republican senators necessary to overcome a filibuster go along? A white paper laying this Tillis-Sinema blueprint is circulated on Capitol Hill. Congressional aides and advocates plugged into the talks tell me, though the details are in flux, here's a partial list of the major items it contains. Some form of path to citizenship for 2 million Dreamers. So again, amnesty right off the bat. A large boost in resources to speed up the processing of asylum seekers, including new processing centers and more asylum officers and judges. More resources to expedite the removal of migrants who don't qualify for asylum. A continuation of the Title 42 COVID health rule restrictions on migrants applying for asylum until the new processing centers are operational with the aim of a 1-year cutoff. More funding for border officers. So here's what the Republicans, here's what the weak, pathetic Republicans will say. They'll say, oh, look at all we're getting. Look at what we're getting. We're getting more funding for border security. We're getting Title 42 to stay in place. Look at all the things we're getting. Folks, it's an amnesty bill. And if you think this bill does nothing but call out to the flood of illegals coming to maximize and put the pedal to the metal of those numbers times 10, it'll be biblical if something like this was to happen. If people who broke federal law illegally are now able to now stay with a pathway to citizenship, what do you think that does to the number of people coming into the country? Just use common sense and tell yourself what you think that means. I can tell you it doesn't mean we can jump up and down and go, ooh, look, we're getting more money for border security. Ooh, look, we're getting Title 42. That will pale in comparison to what happens at the border. The idea behind this compromise, it says, is this. It gives Democrats protection for 2 million dreamers and strengthened defenses of the due process rights of some migrants. It gives Republicans faster removal from the country of migrants who fail to qualify for asylum, a continued restriction on applications for the next year, and more border security. Sounds like a great deal to me. I can see why Tom Tillis was so quick to want to go put this bill together with Kristen Sinema and compromise. Sounds like a great deal, doesn't it? 2 million, which will be 4 million, which will be 10 million, which will be 12 million, get a pathway to citizenship, and we flood the southern border continually. And if you don't think that's going to happen, you're not paying attention. The boost in resources would hopefully reduce the strain at the border, hopefully would be the key word there, hopefully reduce the strain at the border by moving migrants through the asylum application process more quickly. The processing facilities would be temporary detention centers, but additional lawyers would be present, enabling more robust representation. On the flip side, if migrants fail the initial interview determining whether they have a credible fear of persecution, 80% of the people who come here don't have any fear of persecution, if not 90%. If returned to their home countries, they'd be removed much more quickly. A Title 42 health rationale, which is indefensible as a border management tool, would be kept ostensibly to control flows while the reforms are implemented. The Government Accountability Office would have the authority to end it after 1 year if the processing centers are up and running. It's hard to say whether 10 Republican senators would back such a deal to get it past the GOP filibuster. This will become harder when former President Donald Trump and advisor Stephen Miller scream that it represents a massive betrayal by elites, as they will undoubtedly will, and right-wing media propagandists such as Tucker Carlson amplify that toxic message to enrage the base. Again, the idea that what we're seeing at the southern border now, the idea that a bill like this would not amplify that, and the left in the media framing it as, oh, no, this is going to put a huge pause on what's going on. We'll get the border under control. All right, you give a couple people amnesty, but don't you worry, you're going to get more money, you're going to get more border agents. We're going to lock down that border, and boy, we're going to just put an end to that. Guys, if you think that's what's going to happen, then I'm not exactly sure what to tell you. You're not paying attention to what's going on at the border. Ask Ben Bergquam if he thinks that's going to happen. Ask Tom Homan if he thinks that's what's going to happen. Ask anybody who's actually spent some time at the border, unlike the current president and vice president, who have spent zero time there, like the people who write about these articles who have spent zero time there. Ask them if that's what they think is going to happen. So here you have Tom Tillis from North Carolina, who knows that he can get the usual suspects to play ball with him. He can get Collins, he can get Murkowski, he can get the Romneys of the world. And there's Mitch McConnell under the shade of darkness, pushing this along, playing ball, and then outwardly not telling us he's playing ball, because that's what Mitch McConnell does. We've told you this for years. But you have too many weak Republicans that, God forbid, they would even think about not participating in the lame duck, as I talked about on election night with Steve Bannon and others who were on our election night coverage. How about not participate in the lame duck? How about send a message and saying, we're going to play differently this year? No, we don't get that. Here's Tom Tillis from North Carolina. Now, the word is he wants to be governor, so he's going to throw the whole state under the bus. North Carolina didn't vote for this. You go around the state of North Carolina, you ask people if they want an open border, if they want a flood of illegals continuing to come into the country. I would say they don't. I would say they don't want Republicans, before they even take office in January, compromising, quote unquote, with Kristen Sinema or any other Democrats. I mean, you haven't even taken office yet. I mean, it's just unbelievable that here they are. They want to get as much through. Think about this. Here's the Republicans. Do they want to participate in the lame duck session? Of course they do. They wouldn't dare say they wouldn't participate. They want to raise the debt ceiling. They want to push through amnesty. They want to push through more spending. They passed the Marriage Act. I mean, all of these votes, Tom Tillis is behind both. Mitch McConnell's behind both. This is the Republican Party. We're going to give amnesty to 2 million people. So what do you think is going to happen after that to the other 4, 5, 6 million who are already here illegally? Well, if we listen to Chuck Schumer, they're going to be next. They're going to be next. If you think this is going to be 2 million and done, you're crazy. It's going to be 6 million. It's going to be 10 million. It's going to be 12 million. And that's just the people who are here. Never mind the ones that are going to come when they see this. It's going to be a biblical flood over the border, as if it's not already bad enough. That's what's going to happen. But it's just the Republican Party, just when you think, okay, this time will be different. No, this time will be worse. This time will be worse. They want to do this before the Republicans get into office. This is why they hate Trump. This is why they'll hate DeSantis. This is why they'll hate, quite frankly, anybody else, Pompeo or anyone else that's thinking about running. If they're going to be strong on the border, if they're going to be strong against Iran, if they're going to be strong against China, they're going to be despised, just like everybody else, just like they do to President Trump. And it's just laughable what we've heard about this tweet he put out and the wording he chose, and all of a sudden every Democrat wants to wrap themselves in the Constitution. Will Republicans betray their voters on lame duck immigration reform? By Rajan Lad today in the American Thinker. And what I love about the article is how he opens this, because the nomenclature is such an important part of this, because we give away the language when we, on all of these things, we give away the language. He says, yesterday the Washington Post reported that Senator Tom Tillis and Kristen Sinema have reached an agreement on a draft framework of immigration reform. Then he says, it is important to know that D.C. has its own jargon that often functions as a euphemism in order that those beyond D.C. don't easily comprehend the motives. Exactly right. We're going to call them the dreamers, not illegal aliens. Mitch McConnell's going to get behind this vote, but no one's going to know about it because the media will do its bidding for him. Everything's in the cloak of night, under the cloak of secrecy. What Republicans have been involved with this proceed? Tom Tillis doing this on his own? Or is he only going to Romney and the usual suspects to work this deal? What other senators in the Republican Party know about this, have known about it, have been involved with it? Immigration reform in D.C. means amnesty and a pathway to citizenship for illegal migrants, period. Compromise usually occurs when the GOP has surrendered its agenda before the Democrats. Well, the Democrats never surrender their agenda, as we've talked about endlessly. They have an agenda, then they have a backup agenda, then they have a backup to the backup agenda, and then they've got another backup agenda after that. Republicans, they have no agenda. Their only agenda is to go along with the Democrats' agenda. That's their agenda. And if they can throw you and your state under the bus while they do it, after you've given them their vote, then they'll do that, like Tom Tillis is doing in North Carolina right now. Clearly, because I don't think North Carolinians voted for this at all. The objects of the Democrats' generosity currently are the dreamers. And of course, we know the dreamers, DACA, the Obama administration doing an end run around the Constitution. Again, here's that Constitution thing that, again, the Democrats love to cloak themselves in when it fits their agenda. But God forbid President Trump puts out a tweet that really wasn't well thought through. Oh my God, it's the Constitution. Look at this guy. The Constitution's in danger. The Democrats hate the Constitution. It stands in their way of eternal power, of green utopia, of iron-fisted top-down government, bigger and bigger and bigger and more of it, more of it, more of it. All it does is stand in their way. They hate the Constitution. Who are they kidding? They wrap themselves in it only when it's, get Trump Day, which is every day, or anything else that they can say. They don't believe in the Constitution. They don't believe in the Supreme Court. They don't believe in the Electoral College. They don't believe in the filibuster. You could go down the line of the things they don't believe in. But if they can use it to their narrative and for the media to run with it, then they love it. Most of the dreamers were born in Mexico, 80%, followed by El Salvador, 3.8%, somewhere in Asia, Caribbean, Europe, and Africa. So what are the details? Developed by Tillis and Sinema, we know that. The most important, a pathway to citizenship for 2 million dreamers. And folks, I'm just going to tell you, if you think it's 2 million and you don't think it's 4 million, 6 million, 10 million, 12 million, however many are here, if it's 2 million to start, you can imagine the other 8 or 10 that's going to back that up is going to be next. And if you listen to Chuck Schumer and were to believe Chuck Schumer just a few weeks ago, what did he say? They should all be on the pathway to citizenship. All of them. Every single one of them should be 12 million or so. So if you think this is 2 million, then you're buying into the media narrative. And they say here, on the surface, this looks like a win for both parties. Not really. Democrats will have 2 million new voters in the form of dreamers and new asylum seekers who are likely to be future Democrat voters for sure. Republicans will have border security. No, they won't. No, there's nothing about this that secures the border. There's nothing about this that secures the border. You don't get a wall out of it. You don't get a more secure border. They say maybe you'll get some more border agents, but who cares? If the Biden administration doesn't let them do their job, they demonize them. They go after them. They accuse them of doing things they didn't do, like whipping migrants coming across the river valley there in the water, which they didn't do. So we know the stories. What's the difference if you have 10,000 more, 100,000 more, a million more? If they can't do their job, you don't have a secure border. If you don't have a wall, you don't have a secure border. If you don't have a secure border, you don't have a country, period. But don't worry, Tom Tillis is on it. The Republicans will have border security, the removal of migrants, and the continuation of COVID-19-based restrictions. Democrats are claiming that the lame duck session is the last opportunity. Of course, right now. It has to be right now. Now. Come on, Tom Tillis. Join us. You'll be a hero. Hardly. They could also claim that 3 out of the 5 points of the deal are in favor of the GOP. Hence, the GOP should sign on. In politics, folks, if you compromise on your agenda despite being in a position of power, you are not only duped, but also a betrayer of your voters. And that's exactly what Senator Tillis seems to be doing in North Carolina. The voters just spoke. They did not vote for an open border. They did not vote for a flow of illegal immigrants coming across the border into the country that eventually find themselves in North Carolina. No, I don't think they did. Republicans are going to take control of the House next month. From then, they have 2 years to author all the laws they want to ensure that the border is secure. They can work to build a coalition with moderate Democrats. There are no moderate Democrats. The only way Joe Manchin becomes a moderate Democrat is if it's 50-50 in the Senate. If it's 51-49, he has all the cover he needs to make it look like he's a moderate Democrat and be able to answer to the people of West Virginia. But if it's 50-50, then we have to see Joe Manchin's true colors on his votes. Remember that. If, however, the Democrats are able to squeeze in their agenda during the lame duck session, it's a victory for the Democrats despite their being in a position of disadvantage. They're never in a position of disadvantage because they're always battling the Republicans. They're always battling people like Tom Tillis, like Susan Collins, like Lisa Murkowski, like Romney, like Kinzinger in the House when he was there. When you're battling these people, you're never at a disadvantage because they never play hardball. They just play uniparty ball. And when they play uniparty ball, they're never at a disadvantage. Legislation will need 60 votes to pass the Senate. Well, okay, currently there are 50 Senate Democrats. There may be 51 after tonight, but there still may be 50. The Democrats need at least support of 10 Republicans. Well, who might they be? Who might they be? Let's take a look here after they talk about Trump and Miller and all the things we already talked about. Who might they be? Well, we have Senator Roy Blunt. He's retiring. Could be a maybe. There's one. Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania, for sure. He's another one. There's 2. Mitt Romney, 3. Lisa Murkowski, 4. You have Susan Collins, 5. You have McConnell, 6. And you probably have others who will take a serious look at this and virtue signal over it, just like they did the Marriage Act. Let's focus on the idea of granting the Dreamers a path to citizenship. By entering the country illegally, the migrants have committed a crime, if that matters anymore in this country. Perhaps the crime was committed unknowingly because the minor had no option but to accompany his parents and illegally enter the U.S., but it still is a crime. And of course, there's a big question on whether most of these kids who come are actually with their parents and not with some coyote or someone who just leaves them here. A crime, you would think, needs to be punished to deter others from committing, well, similar crimes. If the Dreamers are granted a pathway to citizenship, it sends an invitation to Dreamers all around the world. It's the equivalent of saying, feel free to bring your children to the U.S. illegally. Someday, they'll become citizens because we'll get more Tom Tillises in the Senate, and don't you worry. There are other disadvantages, too. If a citizenship is given to one group, it gives hope to other groups who are here illegally. They could stay in the hopes of qualifying eventually and receiving citizenship. Listen, wait long enough, and Tom Tillis will come along or somebody like him, and don't worry, you'll be all set. Forget the citizens that are actually here, the actual, citizens of the country. People say we're a country of immigrants, and yes, that's true, legal immigrants, but we're a country of citizens first. And the Democratic Party thinks that the illegal alien is more virtuous than you, the citizen. And don't ever forget that. Presence of illegal aliens is a burden on the taxpayers and on the facilities and infrastructure meant for the citizens. If illegal migrants work for less than minimum wage and without benefits, once again, the citizen could see a drop in wages or be rendered unemployed. And remember, the Democratic Party, folks, they're the party of the working men, right? They're the party of you. They're the working of the small guy, the little guy. No, they're not. They don't give a damn about you. They don't give a damn about you. If the illegal migrants are of the criminal variety, once again, the victims of these crimes will be the citizens. Usually it's the working class who suffers from this. In the end, every country has laws that have to be followed, and immigration laws are not that all much different, not that all different. The only way to enter or temporarily work in the U.S. is to apply for a visa and undergo a thorough background check and an interview. If the applicant clears all these phases, he can enter or temporarily work in the U.S. The duration of that stay and work also depends upon the visa permits. The only path to citizenship is by naturalization, by marriage, through the parents, or through the military. Each route has its own specific requirements that must be followed. If this proposed immigration reform plan is passed, lawmakers will be incentivizing the breaking of laws, which under the Biden administration has really become a common theme. We've never seen lawlessness all across this country at the border and everything else like we have under the Biden administration, which is the last thing that any lawmaker you would think would want. Hopefully the GOP senators will not participate in this sneaky attempt by the Democrats to push their agenda and instead focus on the dreams and aspirations of the U.S. citizens. And I think that's just about right. But Tom Tillis thinks otherwise. And the people of North Carolina, let's hope you remember this the next time Tom Tillis comes up for a vote in anything. His word is he wants to be your governor. But this is it, folks. This is your Republican. Unfortunately, this is a small part, well, not even a small part. This is a decent part of the Republican Party. Virtue signaling, hey, look at us, we play along. Everything we've always talked about. Same leadership elected, same nonsense going on. Here we have a lame duck session, and what are the Republicans trying to do? Pass an omnibus bill for ridiculous, out-of-control spending for the Biden administration's objectives. They pushed through the Respective Marriage Act. Now they're trying to push through amnesty. They're trying to raise the debt ceiling. I mean, is this what the Republican Party stands for? Is this what we vote for these people for? These are the priorities? In a lame duck session, no less? You can't just say, no thanks, we'll see you in January. We'll do our work and be ready to go January 20th at 12:01 in 1 second or whatever it is. No, we're going to get all this work done now in the lame duck session before the Democrats give up power. If that makes sense to anybody, I don't know. It certainly doesn't make any sense to me. All right, folks, as always, support our sponsor, Mike Lindell, mypillow.com/LFS6B. Use our code LFS6B. We really appreciate it. It's a great way to support the show. Get all your Christmas shopping done, mypillow.com. Use our code LFS6B at checkout for 10 to 60% off most items. And, of course, we'll see you in the next one.